One of the most important things that needs to be managed on a day-to-day basis is your creditors. Effective business management requires that you know and have an up-to-date view of how much money you owe whom, and also when it's due. In the Visage system, you would typically manage that on a day-to-day basis using the Accounts Payable Enquiries area. And I'm going to concentrate this video on these first three inquiries: a multi-supplier inquiry, an accounts payable inquiry, and a voucher inquiry. The other two items are bit cubes. They're really great for an in-depth analysis of your creditors, what you've spent, and payment analysis and so forth, but they'll be covered in a separate video. Now I'm going to start with my multi-supplier inquiry. This is something that I might go into at least once a day, just to give me an overall picture of exactly how much money I owe and to whom. Down on the bottom of the screen, you get to see aged totals for all suppliers. In this case, current, 1 period, 2 period, 3 period, and so forth, and a total amount that I currently owe. You can also read across to see how much you owe individual suppliers as well. If you wanted to get the details of an individual supplier, let's say this David Jenkins Enterprises, you'll notice it has a red underscore on it. And a red underscore or any underscored figure in the system generally means that you can click on it. And certainly if you're in an inquiry process, that's what you want to do. So in this case, remember I was doing a multi-supplier inquiry. If I click on this supplier code, I'm now taken into an accounts payable inquiry. That was the second item off the menu. So basically I'm using my multi-supplier inquiry to drill in and get details of one individual supplier. The first opening screen is a summary that gives me much better visibility of what business I've conducted with this supplier over many months. These monthly figures are accumulated whenever you do end of period processing within the accounts payable system. You also get to see the total amount that is outstanding against this supplier, what the value of the last payment is that you actually made to them, when that was, and also when the last time was that you had a purchase from this supplier. If it was an overseas supplier, then you would also see in this field what the currency is that you're normally going to be paying this supplier in. And if there was an overseas supplier involved, and we'll have a look at one of those later if time permits, all of the figures that you see are expressed in that currency. So if I happen to be dealing with a supplier that you pay in US dollars, these summary figures would be in US dollars. All of the details that we look at in terms of the individual invoices and payments and so forth are also going to be in that currency. You'll notice on the left hand side I have a number of pages available to me from my navigation area. If I select the current page, I'll go in and have a look at what the system considers to be current vouchers, or it's actually what you consider to be current vouchers, because you control when you move vouchers from current to history. Unlike debtors, which does that automatically at the end of each month, or end of each period, sorry, in the creditors system you actually control separately how long or how much information you want to classify as current, and it is just a designation because the information is still available to you in great detail through the historical transaction tab. But if we just look at this for a moment, the display shows us all of the voucher numbers. Now you may recall the creditor system or accounts payable system identifies all of the transactions that come into it with a voucher number. That is a unique number that is incremented every time you get an invoice or an adjustment note from your suppliers, every time you make a payment to them. Any transaction that impacts the amount of money that you have owing to a supplier is going to have a unique voucher number allocated to it. That's your internal reference for this. The supplier's reference is shown under the invoice number field. The type column here shows us what type of voucher computer check we're dealing with. Basically, N is a normal voucher, Q is a check. Well, actually, I can read them off over here. A would be an adjustment. M would be a manual check, C a computer check, N is a normal voucher, O is an open payment, P is a prepaid, V is a void. Now, in the example I'm looking at the moment of this screen, there might actually be a query with the supplier about a payment that I've made. And at the moment, I'm seeing every voucher that's actually out there. If I wanted to just have a look at the checks that have been written against this supplier's account, the easiest way to do that would be to come across here to my filter data, and just, if I use this minus button here, it says uncheck all. So if I click that button, everything that was ticked suddenly becomes unticked. And now I'm just going to select computer check and manual check, and then I'm going to apply my filter. And when I click the apply filter button, my screen adjusts, so now I'm only looking at payments that I've actually made against this account. And obviously there are other criteria that you can apply here as well, having a look at things in terms of date ranges, or if you have a particular check number or an invoice number from a supplier, you could enter that up as well. And we'll have a look at some of those variations shortly. If we now notice once more that our voucher numbers have a red underscore on them, now this is a computer check. The DD indicates to me that it was a direct debit, or in other words a bank transfer that was actually made out to this person. But if I click on the actual voucher number, you may recall the original menu that I said we were going to investigate at the top level said a multi-supplier inquiry. It then said that we had an accounts payable inquiry, which you can access directly from that menu, where you're looking at the details for just one particular supplier. And the third item on that was a voucher inquiry. And we can actually access that from here by simply clicking on the voucher number, and we're now seeing the details of one particular voucher. The details we see will obviously vary depending on the type of voucher we're looking at, but here we can see that we had a computer check that was drawn on the 2nd of January in 2013, and it was actually voided later. You'll notice down here in the application area that this was applied to a void voucher. You'll also see that that is underscored as well, so I can actually click on that and I'll look at the associated void check. I might just go and select a different voucher. Now I have two ways of getting back up to this inquiry screen. You'll remember one way is just to simply click on the bar, or the other alternative is from here, if I just click exit, and it will take me back one level. If we go and have a look at this voucher instead, this one thankfully hasn't been voided. So what we'll see in terms of the applications here is if this check had paid multiple invoices, you would actually have all of the invoices and possibly taking up credits and so forth listed in here in the application area. You have an option of a print button at this point in time as well, and if we select the print, what it will do is generate, in this case, because it's a payment voucher that we're looking at, it will just generate a PDF for us of what the remittance advice probably looked like that we generated. So if your supplier has lost the remittance advice for some reason, or if you want details of exactly how much was paid on this particular check, you can simply come and do an accounts payable inquiry and call it up. Of course, if you were sending your remittance advices via email, you could also go to your sent items in Outlook and recover it from there. The other thing you'll notice is yet another red underscore field here. So if I click on that, I'll actually be taken out to the general ledger system, in this case doing a general ledger source inquiry. And once more from here I could go and drill out to do a general ledger account inquiry as well. Effectively anything that has an underscore on it you can use to click. From this posting inquiry, as this came from a journal, I can also come and do a journal copy. If I use my navigation button, go to the journal copy field, say I'd like to print that. We'll just drop it out to the screen. And remember, we started off with a creditor's inquiry. We then tracked that out to a check journal, and now we're actually going to get a copy of that check journal up on the screen. So this should be giving us enough information to answer any queries that we may have. If we just exit out from that, if we also wanted, like I could have determined what other checks were on that journal from the copy, or I also could have used this source transaction field that would go and find all of the vouchers, in this case from the accounts payable system, that originated from that particular journal. But if we just come back up to our creditor inquiry again, just explaining some more about these buttons down in the bottom. If you keep your eye on the checkboxes down here, I'm just going to click the star, and you'll notice that it says invert all the checkboxes. So in other words, everything that is checked becomes unchecked, and vice versa. The plus will actually go and select everything. So another way I could have done my original inquiry with just as many clicks, because remember when we first came into this process, and let me reset the filter in case you didn't recall, everything was checked down here. And what we had was computer checks and manual checks, so I've unselected those, and using the star button allows me to go and select those out happily as well. Okie dokie, so if we have a look at other screens associated with this particular creditor, if we have a look at the disputed transactions, you'll see at the moment there are a number of disputed transactions. Unfortunately, there's no notes or amounts entered against these, which is bad form on my part in terms of the test data. But if there were any disputed transactions, this screen is going to give you full details of those. And typically they're going to be things like credit claims that you've put in against the supplier, you've recognised in your system now, but the supplier hasn't. We can also have a look at historical transactions associated with this particular supplier as well. And exactly the same functionality that we had in the first instance, in terms of we can click on a voucher number and call details up, and here we've called up a check that has actually paid 80 invoices in this case, and a mighty nice check it was as well. That would have hurt the bank balance at that particular point in time. The other thing that we have is also this column called a note log. Now, if there have been any note log entries made, and I might just come and select absolutely nothing, or unselect absolutely nothing and go and include everything. If there had been note logs made against any of these transactions, clicking on the note log button will call up details of any entries that have been recorded against this particular voucher in this case. You'll notice that some of these has attachments associated with them, so if I just and I can see that because of the attachment checkbox here. So if I just call up this one by clicking on it, we can see the text that was written at the time. We can see whereabouts the file originated from, and there's also a view button that allows us to call up a copy of this particular thing. Although that has a red underscore on it, or because it has a red underscore on it, I can also click the underscore in this case, or the view button. They'll both perform exactly the same task, and here I would get a copy of my invoice coming up on screen. Not all notations need to have attachments associated with them. We can just have standard textual entries that we make against the particular voucher as well, and you can add as many of these as you want as time goes by. The idea is that this becomes the repository of all information pertaining to this particular voucher. If there are any queries or whatever associated with it, you can record the discussion, right? So that in a month's time, or a year's time, or 3 years' time, someone can simply come back, click on the note log, and see all of the important information about this particular transaction. And the question, of course, is what's important? And the answer is Who knows? Nothing is unimportant. If it was important enough for you to make a phone call or to write a letter or whatever, record it against the voucher. Certainly, it was important enough for the supplier to send you an invoice, so you'd certainly like to get an invoice in. And as I said, making an entry against, in this case, a voucher or a supplier, or you'll find note logs littered throughout the system. It's just a case of recording what type of thing it is, putting some text in, maybe attaching one or more files associated with it, and bingo, filing's done, and it just makes life a whole lot easier for people moving forward. Now, we did say that we'd go and have a look at some overseas suppliers just to see what's different about them. So, or there's nothing really different, but if I just click on this currency thing here to sort by currency, and if we just go down to the bottom of that, if we pick on, say, this supplier, we'll see that now those boxes are filled in, so we get to see exactly who the supplier or what currency the supplier is paid in, what the current exchange rate is, and that will appear on the top of every screen. So you're always alerted to the fact that this particular currency or this particular supplier is in play for all of the figures we're actually looking at. I'll just go back to that original supplier I was looking at, which was DJ, and we'll adjust the screen accordingly here. And I'm just going to call up details of, say, this invoice or receipt that we had. So if I just click on that and go into the details to call up the original receipt copy again, on the receipt you'll see on the product screen we also have access to the order number. So clicking the order will take us into the order that was used to actually order these products in. We'll get a list of what products physically came in this case it was just the one. There may have been services on there as well, and of course details of the invoices, and potentially a note log associated with this as well, being things that pertain to the particular order. In this case there was nothing. So the whole idea is that using the creditor's inquiry becomes very powerful, very quick, very easy to spread your tentacles out, so to speak, to dive into the bowels of the system, follow details of a particular voucher, call up the receipt on screen, call up details of the originating purchase order, have a look at what impact that had out in the general ledger, have a look at what impact that had out in stock, and so forth. All of the systems are logically linked together, and accessing that information is just a click away. Hopefully that's given you enough information, enough pointers to get you enthusiastic about going out and managing your creditors on a day-to-day basis with the Visage R5 system. Thanks for watching.